What am I talking about? Hi guys, welcome back. If you're new here, my name's Bethany. I'm the girl behind Well Love Knits. We do a lot of chatty videos on this channel. We also do some kind of like project type videos from start to finish, how to knit, pattern inspiration, knitting inspiration videos, and that kind of stuff. I've been really leaning into the more chatty, long format type videos lately, because honestly, that's exactly what I love to watch. There's nothing better to me than seeing some people that I subscribe to, seeing their knitting podcasts coming up every week or every other week, where I can sit down for an hour plus with my knitting and just catch up with them. And so podcast episodes, knit and chat type episodes, those are my favorite personally to watch. And I want to create things that I know I would watch. So hopefully you also like it too. But yeah, so we're doing a knitting podcast episode this week because I have some projects to update you guys on. I've done a little bit of a cast on party, and there are a lot of things that are on the needles that you didn't see in the last knitting podcast episode. So there's been a lot of change since then, which is really exciting. So I'm just gonna dive into the first thing to share, the first and only finished object, which was something that I was showing you as a whip last time. Very excited about it because, my knitting has not been very fast in the last couple of months. So I'm just now starting to pick that up again, and baby knits are definitely to thank for that. So I'm very thankful that I have things to share, which is why I'm now starting to do podcasts again. Anyway, so this is the Monday suit by Petite Knit. Last time I shared that I was I cast it on a whim actually, because I shared a video of all the baby knits that I wanted to knit for my baby. If you're new here, I'm expecting my first child in September. So I am pregnant, and my lofty goal before baby is born is to knit quite a long list of things. I have a lot of yarn for him. We'll see if I get to it all. I doubt that I will. I mean, it's not like I'm never gonna knit again when he's born. I just want to get a lot of it out of the way so he has a lot of me-made items to wear in those first weeks, especially first couple of months, when I think I'm gonna be a little too busy to pick up my knitting. So we're on a little bit of a baby knits marathon right now. Last time I shared with you guys that I finished the teddy pants, which was the first finished object of the list of patterns that I want to knit for him. And this is the second one. Although this wasn't on the list, that's what I was trying to say. This pattern right here was something that I kind of forgot about, that I owned. I own this pattern, and I didn't put it on the list of things that I wanted to knit him. So it's on the list now. I used some yarn that I had purchased for another teddy suit to make this onesie instead, and I'm so happy with how this turned out. It is so precious. I'm just really thrilled. This was so much fun to knit. It was kind of, again, a whim cast on. I was looking for patterns in my email inbox because apparently I have a lot of them. I was scrolling through all the Petite Knit patterns that I have purchased in my inbox, and this was one of them that I had forgotten about. And I was just like, okay, well, I have the yarn. I want to cast on another baby knit. Let's do this one. And it was also perfect because after knitting the teddy pants, I was really thinking about, I'm still learning. I'm a new, first time to be mom. So I don't know very much about, babies. I'm learning a lot, obviously. And one thing that I have been getting a lot of great advice about is that onesies in particular would be kind of difficult to get baby in, especially in the first couple of months when they're very small. They can't really support their head. very wiggly, might be very difficult. So it was perfect that I found the Monday suit because this is obviously a button-up suit. You can see that there are quite a few buttons on the front, and yeah, that would just make it a lot easier for him to get in and out of, you know? And I can also unbutton the bottom half and maybe he can stay in the top portion. It would be really convenient, I think, or more convenient for changing than the teddy pants would be. So this was a welcome surprise. So I knit this one up, and like I said, absolutely enjoyable knit. This actually felt like it flew off the needles very fast, and I'm just over here feeling this yarn. This is Knitting for Olive merino yarn, and it's just the softest thing. And it has a really nice smell to it actually as well. I used unscented wool wash, so it has its natural smell, which I'm wondering if that's irritating for babies. I've seen a lot of baby knits knit up in Knitting for Olive merino, which is why I was very comfortable purchasing it at the when I was stocking up on some materials to knit baby knits. But I guess there's only one way to really find out if this is going to be suitable for him, and that's honestly to put it on, because some babies, you know, from what I understand, could have some allergies or irritation with their skin with wool, so we'll see what happens there. That's the only concern that I have. Other than that, this looks like it's gonna be an absolute dream for him to sleep in. I'm just so happy with it. Yes, so I really love this gray color. The buttons that I chose were like, it was a big debate for me. I went to a lot of stores. I'm very picky with buttons. I mentioned that in the last podcast. So you can see here, they're just like wooden buttons that are a little bit on the darker side, but if you look closely, in the very center, there's like a light brown, which I really love. Light brown, a lighter tannish, like little detail, which I think is really nice. As happy as I am with this whip or finished object, there's a lot of mistakes in this one. It first started out with me completely forgetting the rate in which I needed to add the buttonholes. So from the top to the bottom, you can definitely see that there is some inconsistent spacing, but that's okay. I think in the end, I laddered back and dropped stitches for some of them because I forgot to do the yarn overs, and that worked just fine as buttonholes. Honestly, drop stitches work as good buttonholes as well as yarn overs, so I'm not too upset about that. The only thing is, up at the top, you can definitely see this like puckering right there on the band. I think it's definitely happening because they need to be closer together. They need to have less space in between. And then at the bottom, there's definitely less of that puckering because I think they're either perfectly aligned as they should be, or maybe just a tad too close. But who cares? Another thing that I did was knit the legs in the wrong needle size. So maybe you can definitely tell where it is. From far away, it looks fine, right? I mean, it looks proportionate. Even the leg and the sleeve actually look kind of similar in length. You can definitely tell that the pants are a little bit shorter. Luckily for me, I also forgot to start my decreases at some point in the leg. So they are a little bit longer than they should be as far as the instructions go. So maybe that also helped balance it out. It was lucky that I did that with the wrong needle size. But okay, so like right here is where I change to DPNs. And you can kind of tell from up here, that's knit in 3mm. And so what I did was switch to 2.5mm needles, DPNs, for the leg. And that was entirely by accident. I definitely thought that I was holding 3mm, and I even thought to myself, okay, I need to go get the 3mm GPNs. And I did get those, but I also picked up 2.5mm GPNs at the same time so that I would have them with my project because I was going to need them for the ribbing at the bottom. Now, blocking, everything is fine. It's not that big of a deal. But I was so angry. I talked about this in the last Knit and Chat episode. I was so angry when I got down to, on the first leg, when I got down to the ribbing piece, it said switch to 2.5. And then I went to go grab those and they were 3mm and I was very confused. And then I looked down at my needles, which I'd been working with the whole time. And you know, those needles, they have an engraving on them. And with DPNs, you're very much moving the needle around. There's so much opportunity for me to look down at the needle and see that I'm knitting in the wrong size. But for whatever reason, I cruised through the first leg without noticing whatsoever. And you know, I took a moment. I took a moment and then I decided, okay, I'm just gonna knit the other leg the exact same way. And you know what? It turned out just fine, you guys. It looks beautiful. I'm very excited about this. So second baby knit is done. I would definitely knit this onesie again. I thought it was so much fun. I really enjoyed the increases and decreases to form this little button. The little style with the button, the curve right there, that was really fun. And yeah, it was just a great project for me. It really was just so enjoyable. So I'm very happy to now have this second item in baby's wardrobe. So I got really excited when I cast that off that I immediately had to cast on something else that was on my baby knit list. And that is the Ingrid Sweater Baby, which is quite the knit. Very, very cool. I was talking about how much I really love knitting this one, but this is just plain stockinette. There's really not a lot of intrigue to it. It was just enjoyable with the materials and the instructions were very straightforward. Love that. In contrast, this is way more complex looking. This is, like I said, the Ingrid Sweater Baby version. If you're familiar at all with Petite Knits patterns, you know that she released an Ingrid sweater a couple of months ago, I want to say. And that kind of took Instagram by storm. I think a lot of people were in awe with that design because there's just so much interest in it. It's full of texture. It looks like a beast of a project to knit up. So then when I saw that she was going to make a baby version of that sweater, I was like, okay, that's way more manageable for me and something where I would get kind of my fill on the texture, but not have to knit an entire sweater for myself in all of that texture. Although after working this so far, I'm very tempted to knit myself a matching version because how cute would that be, first of all? Second of all, this is just so much fun. Now, I saw a blue version of this on Instagram, searching the hashtag. At first, I wanted to, okay, I'm all over the place. I need to slow down. Getting really excited here. So if you saw the patterns that I want to knit my baby video, when I was first thinking about knitting this pattern, I was going to knit it up in Double Sunday in a more creamy color. Actually, I think I got the wrong color that I ordered, but even still, I think once I got the cream and I was really thinking through, you know, like I was saying earlier, I'm learning a lot more. Maybe I'm kind of rationalizing a little bit more than past the excitement of, oh, I want to knit this and have baby look in a certain way. I'm now thinking more practically, I think, than I was a couple of weeks and months ago when I first was ready to get started on this baby knit journey. So originally I wanted to knit the Ingrid sweater in a nice plain cream color. I thought that would be really classic and look really nice, but not very practical because if I'm going to spend all this time knitting up a very complex a textured sweater for my baby. I don't want him to throw up on it once and then it be ruined. So that was kind of like the first thing that I was just like, okay, maybe the cream wasn't exactly the right color choice. That being said, I started looking at all of the different versions that were being knit up as part of like the test phase of the Ingrid Sweater Baby. And one of them really caught my eye. I don't know if she was a tester necessarily, but she's definitely started and finished the sweater since it came out. It was this very beautiful baby blue version, and it was knit in some drops yarn, I think. I don't know exactly what color it was, but it was like this really beautiful light blue, which inspired me to go out and look for some light blue yarn. So actually I wanted to share this swatch that I knit up first. So I was really excited to cast it on. I actually went down to one of my local stores and picked up some more of the Baby Cash Soft Merino, because after I'd thought about it, I was like, getting double Sunday would be very difficult for me because I wanted to cast it on immediately. And the last time when I ordered, it took weeks to come in. So I was like, that's not really an option. I'm not going to go for double Sunday. So I needed to find an alternative yarn. And because of my great experience with the teddy pants, I picked up some of this Baby Cash Soft Merino in this gorgeous, gorgeous color. I don't know what color this is, but I really love it. It's a mix between like a steel blue and a baby blue. It's not quite baby blue in that like really bright way. It's just a little bit more moody than that. And I just really loved it because it had a softness to it, but it wasn't like electrically baby blue, like very bright. And so I really loved this, and I used this. I picked up quite a few skeins because it wasn't exactly a match, and I was thinking I would knit this in 2 strands, which made me buy a lot of yarn that I couldn't actually return. Long story short, it didn't work out. With the 2 strands, it would have been way too bulky. And then I knit it up in 1 strand, and it was a little too loose of a gauge. And then I was thinking, well, you know, instead of sizing down my needles and having to recalculate and everything, I'm going to get some other yarn. So all that to say is I really love this yarn. This is an acquisition, I guess. We're going out of order, but I'm going to have to find, I think I'm going to make like a 2-piece set or something with all of this yarn that I have here, because I just really am obsessed with this color right now, especially for baby boy. I'm like really imagining he would look super cute in this. I have no idea what he's going to look like, but I imagine he's going to look so adorable. And yeah, so I definitely I'm upset that I couldn't return the yarn, but I'm not so upset because I do really like this color yarn. I do like this yarn. I know it produces a really good fabric, so I'm gonna have to find maybe another pattern to work this up in. But after knitting this swatch, I was like, holy cannoli, this is so much fun to knit. I really love the way it looks in swatch form, but you can kind of see here that it's a little loose. It's just too flimsy, honestly, and I thought that something else would work a little bit better. But still, it looks nice just hanging up on my bulletin board. You know? Right. So anyway, went back to the store and got a different type of Rowan yarn. This is a superwash wool yarn that they had, which pretty much fit gauge identically. The reason that I looked at it before, but the reason I didn't go for it was because the blue was just a little bit more baby blue than this one. So you can see the difference here. This is where I was like kind of leaning towards, but this is a good second option, and I think it's really turning into a beautiful sweater. I'm really loving the way that this sweater is turning out. The pattern is honestly so addictive to knit. Especially these little crosses right here. That was probably my most fun piece of the pattern, and then also the moss stitch. I love a good double moss stitch, so I'm really happy with this. My least favorite, I would say, is this, yeah, the double rib. I'm not crazy about it, but I think as a whole it looks really, really nice. And now all I have to do is switch out onto another pair of needles and then work the ribbing, and I'll have the body finished and I can get started on the sleeves. I just have a lot of projects on the needles that I need. So these are just on hold for now because, yeah, I think I got pretty far on this project and I'm really happy with the result. I kind of also don't really want it to end because once I get started on the sleeves, I'll be doing this fun little texture again, and it's just so much fun to knit. And like I said, this is definitely kind of fulfilling my need for a very complex knit, which actually isn't complex at all. This is very simple. If you're intimidated by charts, I would honestly recommend working up a baby knit because this is manageable. You see that you only have a certain amount of rows that is very doable, and that's not as intimidating. And I think, yeah, it's really fun. And I think it's a good way to kind of introduce yourself to charted knitting. I have done some kind of charts in the past, so I won't say that I was 100% a beginner to charted knitting, but this has definitely grown my confidence in it, and I'm just really excited to knit up more projects with charts. And it definitely seems like something that I won't avoid in the future just because a pattern has a chart. I think I have the confidence to be like, okay, I can totally do that. So, would 100% recommend this even though I'm not quite done with it yet. This has been a great whip to have on the needles, and it's honestly just flown by. And I am knitting the 6 to 9 months because with this size, I was thinking, well, with this pattern specifically, I was thinking that a lot of effort was going to go into it, and I should knit up one that I think he would be able to fit in for longer or have a little bit more time in. So that's why I went for the 6 to 9 months. But I think, honestly, if I could squeeze it in, I would also do a smaller version so that he could wear it even sooner, just in a different color. But yes, really happy of how this one's going. Okay, so this next one, I'm just going to touch on briefly because if you caught up with me in the last Knit and Chat video, you will have seen this. This will look very familiar to you. So I honestly just cast this on right before that video started because I've learned my lesson. With those Knit and Chats, I've tried to work on, whatever was on my needles at the time. And I've been burned with some more complex stitches that you really need to pay attention to. Those just don't work for me. I can't knit and think about chatting with people and then, try and focus on what's on hand. I really need simple projects. So that plus, because we're coming into the summer months, I've been really, really wanting to get this yarn out of my stash, which I touched on again last time. This is Rowan Cotton Cashmere, which was kindly gifted to me. And I have not knit this up. I was gifted this last summer and it was 100% my intention to knit it up. Unfortunately, I just couldn't get around to it with everything else that I had going on my needles. So this unfortunately has been sitting in my stash for quite some time, which is a real shame because it looks like a lovely fiber and it has been a lot of fun to work with. And I'm excited to see how it turns out into a garment. So that really inspired me to cast on this, which is going to be a garter stitch cardigan, also inspired by one of my absolute favorite me-made items in my wardrobe right now, which is my Vivian cardigan. Again, I talked about this in the Knit and Chat, so definitely go check that out if you're interested to have some extra time knitting and chatting. But yes, so I'm really just freestyling here, and I got actually a little bit further than where I left off on the video. So it's inspired by that cardigan, but the construction is going to be a lot different. This is the back panel, and you can see it's kind of like a trapezoid at the moment. Very flimsy fabric, nice and draped, so kind of difficult to see. There we go. So here you can see that, yeah, there's a bit of a trapeze going on, trapezoid. Anyway, so this was shaped with German short rows, but I did a little bit of a miscalculation because honestly, I was just winging it. And the amount of stitches that I had cast on and worked up resulted in quite a tiny body panel. So actually what I did was after that decided I wasn't happy with how wide it was. And so I just started increasing as well. So there's a mix of German short rows, and then honestly just make one left and rights at the edges here. And you know what? You really can't tell a difference if I'm being honest. Here, I'll even like put this up and you tell me, where does the German short row start and end? Well, it starts up here, but where do the increases start? I guess maybe there's a difference in the slope, potentially. Not so sure, but garter stitch is actually a very forgiving fabric, which I'm very excited about and surprised about too. As long as you don't drop stitches or anything, everything is just fine. Yeah, so again, not a lot of progress here, but the idea is to work a little bit past the armholes, to work up to the point where the armhole would potentially end, and then, get started to pick up stitches along this side right here, which will be the shoulder. And there's not going to be a lot of drop shoulder going on here, but there will be a little bit, and I'm interested to see how this fabric will kind of drape, and I think it might even be a little bit more dropped shoulder-esque than I might think at the moment. But yeah, I definitely could have given myself more room around the neckline. This is quite small, but this is gonna sit back on my back a little bit further, I think. So the more rows that I work for the shoulders, I think I should be just fine. This is a nice like stone gray fabric, and I think it'll be a really good neutral piece to have. The fabric is definitely very lightweight and airy, perfect for summer. So I'm really hoping that I will be able to get somewhere with this before the warm weather months are over. Don't hold your breath though, because I'm so energized by baby knits, and that is definitely my top priority. But I was kind of craving a bit of a selfish knit, I'm gonna be honest, when I cast this one on, and one of my goals for this year is to really get my stash down, which I have been doing very well on. It's just the problem is I'm stash busting, but working on a lot of whips and not finishing them, which, I'm happy to start getting all of this yarn out of my stash, but if I'm not finishing them, it kind of makes the problem worse too. It doesn't help the problem, let's just put it that way. Yeah, so not following a pattern here, but it is inspired by that Wool and the Gang cardigan that I have knit up in the past. Construction is completely different though, so it really is its own, and I'm happy to do that. I wish there was a pattern out there already. Maybe that would have made life a little bit easier, but honestly, I'm not too bothered about being a perfectionist with this, because again, yeah, we're just kind of winging it and seeing what happens. So yes, very happy to see that grow potentially very soon. But that has really just started and stopped after last week's video, because I got really energized after working this garter stitch and starting a stash busting project. I got excited and then also a little guilty about another fiber that has been in my stash for a really long time. And I don't know if you're going to recognize it in this new form, but this is Mima's yarn. So my grandmother gave me a very large skein of yarn, an obnoxiously large skein of yarn that was hanging out in her house. You know, she had 8 children. One of them knit. At some point in time, she didn't tell me exactly how long she had had this yarn for, but the potential is decades. It could be decades old yarn. So, again, in that baby knits video, when I was kind of talking through all the baby knits that I wanted to knit up, this yarn here is one that's very special to me, and I wanted it to be more of an heirloom type piece. And when I received it, I was kind of stumped on what to make for myself, of course, because that's kind of where my mind goes with all types of fiber. I'm like, okay, but what can I make for myself? But when I had received that yarn, this was many years ago, I was thinking, you know what, this would actually be nice for a baby. So now is the time to knit it up. And I actually took that large skein and caked it up into quite a few cakes here. This is what I've got. I've already used up one cake that I've made. So I don't know how much yarn. I didn't weigh it, and I didn't do the flame test like many of you are suggesting that I do. I honestly kind of just jumped into this project, and maybe if I have yarn to spare, I'll do a little test to see. I should definitely do that to be able to figure out how to care for this item. But anyway, so I've caked it up into many different skeins to kind of ease of portability, and to be honest, that other skein was a little questionable. So I got started on the project that I had immediately thought it would be perfect for, which is the Selma Sleep Suit by Petite Knit, which is basically, it's another onesie type, but it's more of like an outerwear, I would say. Very snuggly, very cute, knit up in all garter stitch, which is kind of why I started this project after getting started on this one. I was like, oh, there's another garter stitch project that I've been wanting to knit up, and another thing of yarn that I've been wanting to get out of my stash. So let's quickly cast that on and get started on that. So yeah, this has kind of taken over my priorities list from all of these other whips as well. So I started this one and kind of quickly put it down because I was like, why are you knitting something for yourself? Knit something for the baby. And then I got started with this one. And then I've honestly not been able to put it down since. So that was earlier this week. Yeah. So the Selma Sleep Suit, I'll put a picture over here, if I remember, is a little hooded outerwear, like I said. And this yarn actually looks nearly identical to what she knit up the sample in, which is why my head immediately went to that pattern. And it's so much fun to knit. So it starts from the top down and you knit the hood. And then now you can see I'm working on the raglan increases for the sleeves and then the body. And I'll continue working that as I go. But I was really excited when I was working this up. It's very similar to my balaclava construction, which was actually also knit in garter stitch. So this was a very familiar construction to me at the very start. I was very excited about that. And then I just knit the hood, and you can see here, there are some increases that are being worked. This is one of the sleeves. And then we are working on buttonholes as well. So there's the first buttonhole. And I'm going to be a lot better this time to figure out where the next buttonhole goes to make it a lot more proportionate than the Monday suit. Because I feel like here, I don't think I'm going to be able to hide it as well as I could there. Yeah. This is also turning into a very fun and addictive knit to do. It's literally just knitting back and forth, which is really meditative, but the construction is very interesting, starting with this hood and then now going into a raglan construction. I'm just enjoying it because it's also knit back and forth. I really like the fact that I can just knit both sides, which is why it's kind of growing a lot faster, I think, than if this was stockinette stitch, for example. Having to purl those rows, I think, would be pretty tedious at times. But as enjoyable as this is, I am getting a little nervous because I was really thinking that with that skein that I was going to have enough. I chose to knit the 3 to 5 month, or whatever the range is, starting at 3 months. I think it was 0 to 3 months, 3 to 6 months, maybe. So I decided to do the 3 to 6 months because I'm just concerned that if I knit too many 0 to 3, he's not going to be able to fit into it. Like, what if I have a big baby or something? I don't know. So I feel like 3 to 6 month range is a really safe age range to kind of go for. So that's why I chose this size here. But now I'm kind of regretting that decision just because I'm very limited in the yarn. I don't have like a label for the yarn. I don't know what kind of yarn it is. I don't have access to this yarn anymore. I'm just worried about yarn consumption. That's really what I'm worried about. Granted, I wound these up very tightly because you can see here, this one is wound twice and looks much puffier than these. These are definitely very tightly wound. So I'm kind of hoping that maybe looks are deceiving here because I already went through one tiny little wound up ball for the hood. And now I'm on my second one. Granted, that was a tiny wound up ball. It wasn't like a full skein, I feel like. Here, these are very, very tightly wound, I think. I don't know. Anyway, I'm getting nervous just because there's no way that I can get this yarn again. And I want to make sure that I can finish the garment. Luckily, with this, it's a top-down project. So worst case scenario, if I have to course correct, I will just make it into like a little sweater, like a little sweatshirt with a hood. I could just stop before splitting for the legs and we would just be fine. So my plan is to knit the sleeves first to kind of gauge how much yarn that I really do have. I'm going to weigh these balls up and kind of see what kind of, even though I don't know how long it would be per gram or meter, how much 1 meter weighs or anything like that, at least I'll have some sort of an idea once I finish up like one of these skeins, for example, roughly how much do I have left and will I be able to do it? So that is on my to-do list before I leave because we are going on vacation and this is one of those things that I think I want to finish during that vacation. So to be continued for the next knitting podcast, I'll let you guys know if I won Yarn Chicken or not. Maybe honestly, I wouldn't be upset if it's also just a little jacket. Who really cares? The point is that I wanted to use up this yarn and I wanted to hold on to a piece that was created in this yarn. And I also want to share with Mima that I made something with the fiber that she gave to me very kindly. So this has been my main project at the moment because it's knit in 4mm and I need these needles to work on the ribbing for this. I might switch them out at some point just quickly to get the ribbing over with so then I can get started on the next portion of the pattern. But, right now I just really want to keep knitting that. It's just really addictive and fun. So the last whip that I have to share is something that I talked about last time. It's a more interesting knit and it's not really on my priorities list. But it will be really cool once it's all finished, I think. So it's this thing. Can you guess what it is? Last time I shared another fiber that I wanted to get out of my stash, which is Drops Andes. This neutral, what am I talking about? So this neutral yarn right here, it's like a mix of alpaca and wool. It is a dupe for the yarn that I cannot think of by Wool and the Gang. It's a really good alternative for that yarn. What is that yarn called? Oh my gosh. Anyway, this is the yarn that I was going to knit up a sample of my seamless mock neck sweater in Al Pacino Merino. That's what it is. So this is a good dupe for Al Pacino Merino by Wool and the Gang. It's a fraction of the cost and just as soft in my opinion. And it works up really nicely, just like that other fiber. But I had purchased this with in mind to make a sample garment out of it, but then I just ultimately decided that the color was not for me. And it was another one of those, I cannot return this, so I need to make the best out of it and keep it in my stash and figure out what to do with it later. And I kind of, last time was really like mulling over what I could really use this yarn for that wasn't the traditional sweater, because I don't really want another chunky knit right now in my, well, first on my whips. And second, I mean, it's way too hot now, but second of all, I just didn't want to use this for a sweater because again, the main issue for me is just that it's just too nude on my skin. I wasn't into it. So if you remember last time I shared with you guys this little swatch right here, which is a felted swatch out of this yarn. I just agitated it in the washing machine and it turned into this really cool dense fabric. And I want to make a felted bag out of this. And so I cast one on and got started and quickly realized that this is going to take me ages. Because the thing with felting is this right here, unfortunately I don't have the other swatch, but this right here is much, after being agitated, it shrunk quite a bit, like 30% I want to say lengthwise, not so much, and like maybe 10% widthwise, not so much on the width, but on the length definitely. So you have to consider that when making a project that you want the finished object to be felted, you have to make something that's very large to account for that percentage of shrinkage. So I want to make a felted bag, like I said, a tote bag, and this is what it looks like right now. It looks absolutely ridiculous, but the hope is that it will shrink down to a tote bag size. I've done some math, which I'm not very good at math, but I think my calculations are correct and we're gonna be just fine. So what I did was cast on some stitches for the base and then work that lengthwise. And then when I finished that, I picked up stitches in the round all along the edges and got to work knitting that up. So this is one skein of yarn. So the good news is, while this is going to take me ages, the good news is that this is definitely going to bust quite a chunk of that yarn out of my stash. So if this is one skein of yarn, and I think I had seven to start with, yeah, I think I should be able to get through 4, if not 5. We'll see. Also, I have so many other ideas on like what to use this yarn for felting wise. So if I have extra skeins left over, I'm not going to be very upset, you know, like felted bowls, another version of, you know, felted slippers, you know, obviously accounting for the needle size required, the weight of the yarn. I've seen a free pattern by Senna's Garn that I could potentially use if I use the translated version by Knitting Traditions. I could definitely do that, but I think the weight is definitely off completely. The gauge is definitely off from what I would have. So I would need to do some of my own calculations there. So if I had that left over, I wouldn't really mind too much, because then I could also try out those projects too. But this is kind of just like a fun science experiment, let's say, and I've already started filming the process. This is one of those things that's gonna just take me a while because I want to film and share with you guys. It's gonna be like a free pattern that I'm gonna put on my website, but it's more of a long haul project at the moment when I have the time and the want to work with these chunkier needles. But look at these needles though. I'm using my Luca copper needles and they look so good. Yeah. So on its own right now, I mean, this is a very flimsy bag. This would be terrible, honestly, to put anything into. It would just be so slouchy, and so there's just not a lot of integrity to the fabric as it is right now. But, you know, you could easily, after felting, you can easily tell that it's gonna really be a nice sturdy accessory that you'll be able to put keys and other heavy things in, definitely be able to put your knitting into. So that's my plan for this. And I think it's turning out okay. So I think it's going well, but the only thing that kind of really sucks about this project is that you really have to just finish it and felt it for you to find out if it worked out or not. So there would be really no turning back at that point. So I'm just really using this as a, yeah, let's have fun and see what happens type project, which is also why it's kind of low on the priority list, because, you know, it's just a nice to work up type thing. But I'm very proud because except for one of the baby knits, currently all of my other whips have stash yarn on the needles, which is really great because, like I said, my goal this year was to get rid of 80% of my yarn, use at least 80% of my yarn, and I think I'm kind of on that path. I definitely did some clean out recently to really just decide, hey, I'm not going to be using this yarn, and then, you know, donated it, which was I felt good about doing that, but also I felt really bad going through and just being like, wow, I spent money on this yarn, and I ultimately am now deciding that I don't want to use it and somebody else could find it more useful than me, and it would serve somebody else a lot more. So that exercise, while painful, has also just been more of a motivator for me to kind of, yeah, get some things off on the needles and off the needles and out of my stash before I buy any new yarn. But the positive thing is that I haven't really purchased new yarn except for baby yarn, and I am going to give myself some grace on that because I didn't have any really suitable yarn for babies until I found out I was pregnant and decided to do that little yarn haul. So I'm not going to beat myself up too much about that, but I think I'm going to stop myself from buying any more baby yarn in the near future, at least, because now I have a baby yarn stash that's not even in this container here. It's actually in his dresser. So I have my own separate stash for him, which has gotten a little out of hand too. So hopefully I can get through some more of those knits so I can destash that as well. But yeah, so that's basically everything that I've been knitting up in the last couple of weeks. I'm very excited and energized by all of these projects. They've all just been very fun in their own way to work up and very interesting. I think I got a nice mix here. Baby knits are definitely, I'm just so happy about knitting them. They've just really kind of re-energized my knitting in some way, if that makes sense. And I'm really thankful for that. I would love to hear what you guys have been knitting on while we've been chatting in the last hour or so. I have no idea how long this has been, but I think I was very chatty today as well. I'm just very excited to share all these projects with you. So thank you very much for spending some time with me today. Definitely like this video if you liked it, and maybe subscribe if you haven't already to stick around. I would love to have you here, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.